How did this all come together? What role did the State Department specifically have in this agreement?
Well, you're right. It is a historic day, and it's one of those days when I was there at the White House, not only today, but actually on Friday I was in the Oval Office for the phone call between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu and King Hamad of Bahrain, and it's just been an amazing few days. I feel like it's going to take some time for me to write this down and really process and understand everything that we've witnessed. So I think it's important to put this in a larger context, that these negotiations and these agreements didn't happen overnight, but it all began 4 years ago when President Trump came into office, and his very first overseas trip to the Middle East was to Saudi Arabia, the Gulf, and of course Israel. And President Trump made it very clear that he was going to reverse the previous administration's policy towards the Middle East. That administration decided that they were going to give billions of dollars in sanctions relief to Iran, our enemy, and we decided, you know, that we don't think that's going to work. We want to embolden the Gulf states. We want to embolden Israel. We're going to put our U.S. embassy in Jerusalem. We're going to recognize the Golan Heights. We're going to do all the things that we were told would start World War III in the Middle East. Didn't happen, and instead today you're saying historic peace agreements. So that's really the backdrop or the framework for how all of this came about over the past 4 years. Didn't happen overnight.
President Trump mentioned a few weeks ago at a private fundraiser that he would have a deal with Iran within 4 weeks after he was reelected. He kind of alluded to a deal with Iran again today. What would a deal with Iran actually look like in America's interests?
Well, the regime in Tehran should know that we will continue our maximum economic pressure campaign until they come to the table. President Trump has also said unequivocally that Iran will never obtain a nuclear weapon on his watch. And so we have extended, time after time, we have extended the hand of diplomacy to the regime. And every time we extend an outstretched arm of diplomacy, it's met with some sort of kinetic action. You know, we have seen the policies that Iran has pursued in the Middle East. When given billions of dollars in sanctions relief, we know that money goes to their terrorist proxies around the region. And we're just not going to reward that behavior. So when the Iranians decide that they've had enough of our maximum economic pressure campaign and they want to come to the table and they want to negotiate, we will be here. We will be ready and able to negotiate, talk, and listen.
Because Iran is struggling economically, it means Hezbollah is struggling economically. And right now they're struggling politically as well after the explosion. They report they've taken a lot of blame over that. We heard the president of Lebanon say just a week ago or so, he was asked point blank, what are the chances of normalization with Israel? It would have been unthinkable for him to allude that that was even a remote possibility even weeks ago. But he actually said it's possible. Now, he, of course, laid out conditions and qualifications, but he said it's possible. How much of that is a signifier that there could actually be more major breakthroughs coming in the Middle East?
Well, without speaking to one particular country, I think that you have to remember the breakthroughs that we had with UAE and Bahrain just today are so significant. And I think that they are a turning point for the region in the sense that, you know, as I said earlier, young people in these countries don't want to be beholden to the ways of thinking and acting that have encumbered so many generations. You know, you also think now people will be able to be tourists in each other's countries. Incredibly importantly, these are countries, you know, Israel, UAE, Bahrain, these are countries with thriving tech sectors and energy sectors, and these are countries that can now team up from that perspective. So I think other countries in the region are going to start to see the prosperity and the economic improvement for their countries that comes with normalization of ties with Israel, and it's long overdue.
Not to be a party killer, but in addition to the celebration today, the United States is still trying to round up a coalition to implement sanctions on Iran. It did not succeed at the Security Council. There's no real path forward, according to other members of the Security Council. Now Donald Trump may or may not appear at the UN General Assembly coming up next week. There are rumors he might discuss cuts to the UN, maybe exiting the international body. What is to come now with the United States and the United Nations? Because it seems like that relationship is on thin ice.
Well, I think I disagree with your assessment, actually. So what happened is, it's important for your viewers to know, what happened is that we wanted the arms embargo that is going to expire in October against Iran. We put forward a very simple resolution for that embargo to be extended. And the Security Council chose not to extend that embargo. Now, you're talking at a time when the Iranians are doing things like bombing the Saudi oil infrastructure and taking that temporarily off the line. So this is not a responsible country that should be buying these conventional weapons, tanks, airplanes, and that kind of weaponry from China and from Iran. So we believe that embargo should have been extended. When that was voted down at the UN, we invoked under UN Security Council 2231 UN snapback sanctions on Iran. That expires, I believe, Saturday night, that 30-day window. And we are a part of the Security Council. We are a party to UN Resolution 2231, and we believe legally that those sanctions now have to be enforced. And we are very confident that businesses around the world, in Europe and Asia and the Middle East, these businesses that do commerce and business and trade with the United States, we believe they will follow the UN mandated sanctions just as they always have and are supposed to.
There are other wars going on right now with international bodies, talking the International Criminal Court, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights. Where does all this lead to in terms of the U.S.'s role with international bodies? Can the U.S. establish a working relationship with these bodies?
Great question. We believe in multilateralism that is effective and that works. And if it's not effective and it's not working, we're going to withdraw from it, as with the case with the Human Rights Council that you were alluding to. But there's other multilateral organizations that we think have improved and that work well. Look at funding for NATO. It's at an all-time high. We actually, the Secretary went for the first time, Secretary of State has been in, gosh, probably 20 years. We went to the Arctic Council, a small, very group of effective nations that are working to keep the Arctic demilitarized despite some of the best efforts from Russia. And so there's plenty of places in which there's plenty of multilateral organizations where we work, where we think that our time is effective. But where you have places like the WHO or the Human Rights Council or others, where it's proven to us that the American taxpayer are not getting their money's worth and that it's not effective, we're going to pull our funding.